Today, I'm going to do an actual Honkai Star Rail tier list instead of the Sampo slander of before, right? Pretty much, I'm going to be ranking everybody aside from the characters that aren't out yet, which I'm moving down here. And I'm going to try to be as realistic and honest as possible for all the characters. It's a little bit more hands-on than my Punishing Grey Raven tier list I posted earlier this week because I haven't had super amazing experience with every character, whereas in this game it's a lot more cut and dry as far as a tier list goes, and it will be a lot easier to rank them. However, I do want to preface this, as I do with all tier list content. This is my opinion on what a tier list could look like, and this is not particularly set in stone. And also, play your favorite characters. For example, I'm going to start by ranking Arlen in D tier. I don't think he's very good, but if he's your best character and you love him to death, play him. Definitely play who you like. So, starting off, obviously, Arlen, D tier. I think he has potential. I think he has a niche role he can fill. However, in the current landscape of the meta, he's weird. He spends health to deal damage with his skill, and he doesn't use skill points. That's a very valuable thing, not using skill points, but he does lose health, and there's not enough self-sustain options for him right now to where he can stay alive long enough. In Simulated Universe, if you went like Destruction Path and every time you hit, you healed for 1% of the damage you dealt, or however it wants to work, he can solo a lot of content just like everyone can. But if he had a way to self-sustain, he would be better. But as of right now, he's pretty much going to sit solidly in the D tier because no one's going to be using him without a healer. And at that point, there's better damage options than he presents himself as. Next up is Asta. I think Asta is A tier. I think she buffs speed, which is really good. She breaks, very good. She's the best fire guard breaker. Overall, very good character. She has a good attack buff as well, and just yada yada yada. She's a great support. I think she gets dragged down a little bit because she does increase speed, and unfortunately speed is not super prevalent, unlike games like Summoner's War where you need a shit ton, right? Speed in this game is largely little fine-tuning, and for the most part, it's figuring out what order your team goes. Whereas in games like Summoner's War, again, you need as much speed as possible and speed tuning, and your speed like really mattered. You could lap people, and it was like a really big deal in that game. So it doesn't have as much of an impact in this game, but she's still a very, very good support, and I really like using her. I just need to build her now that I've built all my other supports up. Bailu, S tier, and this is mostly because healers are going to be S tier. You need a healer. That is just how the game's going to be. You need healers. Having only one free-to-play healer is rough, and they are also going to be S tier, which, yeah, Natasha, boom, S tier. Like, the healers are just S tier. They're both great. One has a revive mechanic. One has kind of more regenerative effects. You get more regen if you heal while your team is low. They both are very good. They are both better than each other depending on the content as well. So they are relatively interchangeable. Because they're not one better than the other for the most part, depending on where you use them, and you're going to want them both at some point anyways, unless they present a new free-to-play healer for us to use. Next, Bronya, S tier. Bronya's great. I have Bronya. My Bronya is at E1. Not because I wanted her to be, but because she happened to be. She's really good, not with any Eidolons, because her attacks always crit. She pushes herself forwards, so you're getting more skill point economy throughout a fight, especially prolonged fights. Her skill is really good. Instantly, your character gets a new turn and a damage boost, and her ultimate is a damage boost and a crit damage boost. So she's the ultimate support for dealing damage in the game. She makes my Seele snort crack. And that's not a joke. Seele with Bronya is so fucking strong. It's dumb. Like, Seele is good, but with Bronya, I don't have anyone else on my team. I could, in theory, clear Chaos Memory content with Bronya and Seele on one team, and then my other side having all of the rest of my invested characters. Because Bronya and Seele are that good that they do not have to let anything else have a turn. My Seele goes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 turns in a row even sometimes. And then Bronya's like, go again. You know, Bronya's insane for making Seele just go Neum. However, Seele also just goes Neum, and which is why she's going to be in the S tier as well. Best single target damage dealer in the game, aside from basically maximum opportunity for damage Clara. However, that's not counting the fact that Seele also gets extra turns and the damage buff from that. So Seele is the best damage dealer in the game, hands down, for single target, and honestly for multi-target, because she just kills shit and then goes to the next one. It's stupid. She gets extra turns. Buffs don't go away during those extra turns, so you get way more buff value on her. You get one turn buff, like from Bronya, can turn into like a 5-6 turn buff on Seele, and she's one of 2 Quantum characters in the game currently, the other one being Qingque, and Quantum is very good. Quantum's break effect is very good, and there's not a lot of it, so if you need a Quantum damage dealer and you have Seele, you're done, you win the game, and you no longer need Quantum anymore. Seele's super OP. Next, I wanted to rate Clara. Clara, also S tier. Best bruiser, semi-tank, damage dealer. She does everything. She can kind of support herself by having some access to heals on her counter attack. And just normally, like, she can heal herself. Can be built super bulky. And her damage is insane, and she does it without even needing to really lift a finger, because Svarog does it, right? Because her counter is so potent. So you can build Clara to solo a lot of content. There are people who are soloing the hardest simulated universe with her, because of course you can, it's simulated universe, but there are even people doing it in Chaos Memory, which is insane. I really wish I had Clara, first of all, because she's adorable, but second of all, she would basically instantly be my back team for Chaos Memory. I would use Bronya Seele in front and March 7th Clara in the back, and I would beat it without any other support pretty much every single time. Clara is really, really strong, and with March 7th, she gets a lot better, because March 7th can throw a massive shield on her with her skill and be counterattacking to increase your damage per turn cycle that you don't even have to really apply yourself to do. And it increases aggro onto Clara. So if you are not running solo Clara, it helps get a lot more aggro onto Clara. And it also reduces the investment you need to have on her, because now you've got a massive shield from your March 7th. March 7th also can freeze with her ultimate, which is very good. She can also freeze as a break effect, being an ice character, which is very good. And her talent is also pretty good. Like, there's March 7th being one of the starting supports that we get is very prevalent for us, because if we didn't have her shields early game, we would be dead. Like, we would just lose. But late game also, we would just lose, because her shields are so strong that it makes it to where you almost don't need a healer. And at E6, just throwing it out there, she becomes a healer. So she's basically a one-man support unit on the defensive side. Whereas normally you would need like Natasha and Fire Trailblazer or someone, right? Next up, I wanted to get Dan Heng. I want to say he's A tier. Manual play. If you autoplay him, probably B, maybe even C tier. The reason for this is you have to have a very specific turn cycle for him to deal maximum damage, but if you do, he pierces like 45% wind resistance on enemies, which is a lot, and increases his damage drastically to make him very competitive with all of the other damage dealing options. On auto mode, if he's not hitting that with his ult and everything every time, he falls off a lot because he just is now dealing not great damage. He's built to take advantage of the pierce damage he does rather than his flat damage. So overall, just basically cookie cutter hunt character, good single target. He slows enemies, which can get really stupid with some characters like Welt, and he pierces a lot of wind, and if you need a wind damage dealer, he's pretty much your go-to, except for Sampo, because I believe Sampo is awesome, but we'll get to him in a bit. Gepard, I think, is S tier. People have been debating on him a lot recently. However, I think if you have him, you do not need a tank anymore. And if you have him, Fire Trailblazer is no longer necessary to have, and you can literally build physical Trailblazer and be okay with that. I think going into the future, when our Trailblazer gets a new element, it could be even better, but might not be a tank, which is where Gepard comes in because he's the next tank and the next AoE tank. We have March 7th doing single target, Gepard doing AoE, and he's just overall a very solid defensive pick, and I think for pure tankiness aspect, better than Fire Trailblazer. However, Fire Trailblazer has immense value for their taunt, their decent break, and just kind of a lot of small things that add up for especially free-to-play player who doesn't have Gepard, maybe. Very important. Herta, I want to put in C tier. I think she can be good. I think in a follow-up damage team, she's good. I think she can just be over-invested in and be good. There's not really a solid ice attribute damage dealer other than Yanqing, which is a 5-star. So for ice damage, she is your best bet. You get her Eidolon 6 for free through playing the game, the simulated universe. I believe, unless I've pulled her a couple times, but I'm en route to get her Eidolon 6. I don't believe I pulled her 3 times already, but basically Herta can be good. She's not the greatest, but she's good. She does deal good damage. She gets damage buffs off of her own talents and stuff, and like she's all right for AoE. And mostly for memes, because let's be honest, if you've been on YouTube recently, you see the clue clue thing like everywhere. So she's good. I want to build her just for the meme, honestly, but I wouldn't build her over someone like Qingque or something, because first of all, you need different damage types, and there is an ice type in March 7th somewhat for damage, but also she's just not as good in AoE damage as a lot of other options. Speaking of AoE damage, Himiko, I super am unhappy, but I think I'm going to put her in B tier right now. I got Himiko as my first 5-star. I really, really wish she was better, but she just isn't. There is a world where against a fire weakness enemy, you run Himiko, Hook, and like buffers and stuff, and run a burn dot team where Himiko's damage is going to increase more and more and more the more burn is on the opponent, and then you just nuke people in like elite enemy fights or boss fights that have more AoE to them, but she's just bad. Her follow-up attack it helps supplement her damage, but her damage just isn't good enough. And I do know that in the beta, she got buffed a lot because she was really bad, but she's still not amazing, which is unfortunate for a damage dealer. Like, I would not even borderline, I would say Hook is a stronger fire damage dealer right now in the scape of the game than Himiko. If there's more follow-up damage, like synergies and strategies going around right now, I could see Himiko becoming a lot better, maybe even S tier in a certain team comp, but as a character right now, she's just not there. And there are better AoE damage dealers in the game, in my opinion, currently. One of which being Hook, for example, which I think is A tier, possibly A plus tier, crazily enough. If Hook was A plus tier, so would March 7th. But Hook has some crazy damage output, really good sustain. You're getting damage over time as well. She's got a lot of like free to play light cones that she works with. She can fit in a lot of team comps just as a sub damage dealer or main damage dealer if you need fire coverage. She has good single target and AoE splash damage and burn. She's just really solid overall, and she functions more off of her basic attack being upgraded rather than particularly utilizing skills for damage. So she's still using about the same amount of skill points. However, it's paced a little differently, I guess you could say. So it is a little beneficial once in a while, depending on what you're doing. So there's that. And just overall, Hook is very strong right now. And as far as fire damage, beats out Himiko, because Himiko just is unfortunately really not amazing. Next is Jing Yuan, obviously new character, and he's S tier. He's S tier with high investment. He's not S tier with low investment. If you're just starting the game and just getting him as your first 5-star pretty much, he's not going to be amazing. Similar to how I started with Himiko and just could no longer play the game after a while because she didn't have enough single target damage. And I had to switch to using Dan Heng and Sushang. AoE damage dealers are not amazing until you get their investment higher. Unless you are basically doing farming stages. And farming stages are easy enough to do anyways, because you're farming them. They're not that hard. But if you wanted to one-hit the waves, I guess, right? So Jing Yuan, good electro damage dealer. His Lightning Lord is insanely good follow-up damage, and his ult is good damage. He's just overall really strong lightning damage dealer. He's not super unique. He's powerful. His follow-up attack is nutty, but he's not super unique because Serval's very similar. And basically, if you combine Serval with Himiko, you get Jing Yuan, which is... yeah, that's pretty much who Jing Yuan is. His damage is some of the highest in both single target and multi-target at investment, with like an average rate of stacks and crits and procs and all the things. He's a little mathy, having the Lightning Lord be basically a separate entity as a whole, but overall a very good damage dealer. He can definitely, if you need an electro damage dealer, he's the best option right now for sure. And he's going to be harder to power creep, similar to Seele, because of how he mechanically works, especially if follow-up attack synergies become more prevalent. You will get more use from him in the long term, most likely. Going into Pela. Pela is A tier, I think, as the only character that can really nerf the opponents rather than buffing your team. It doesn't have as much diminishing returns, because obviously if you get a 30% damage boost and a 30% damage boost, now you're at 60%, but it's, if you instead had a 30% damage boost and then a 30% damage boost stacked on top of that as separate entities, and they were multiplicative instead of additive, you would have more damage. What Pela does is now you have a 30% damage boost and a 30% defense nerf on the opponent, and those are multiplicative, which means your damage is going to scale higher with Pela. Pela is not S tier because she does the damage nerf on her ult, which makes her a little more restricting, unfortunately, but overall she's a very good debuffer, the only real debuffer in the game as far as like not being dot effects, and anyone who has her should build her just because of that, because eventually you're gonna benefit more from a debuffer than from a damage buffer. It's just how the game's going to be. Qingque, I would like to put her in A tier, and in my heart I will, but in the grand scheme of things, she's B tier only because there is a level of luck to her, and she's better in manual too. If you can basic attack with her and cycle through your team, she will replace the cards. So playing her manual, you are able to play her a little more efficiently right now, because that is a play style that seems to be working better statistically. However, auto battle likes to just dump skill points all the time, which becomes a problem, obviously, for your entire team's synergy and survivability, especially. So she is going to sit in B tier. I think if the AI gets better, if she's just becomes stronger as a character through like finding new tech with her or something, right? Like you could definitely see her going to A tier for a damage dealer. And I think because she's quantum damage and she's the only other option other than a 5-star character, she should be an honorary 5-star, or not 5-star, A rank, just because of that, because she is so important for clearing things that are weak to quantum, and you do need a character of every attribute. She does good single target damage too. A fully invested one at the moment would deal single target about the amount of my semi-invested Seele would, which is impressive given my Seele is built around single target attack and Qingque is not. But I also only have really 4-star artifacts on my Seele, and Qingque has max investment, like a bunch of 5-star artifacts. So it's a little, there's some power discrepancies there, but she does good damage. I'm in the end game content with my Seele, and my Seele is not super built, and she's still dealing good chunks. The Qingque does good chunks in single target as well, and is just overall a good character, but not like the top of the top, which a lot of characters are in this game, which is crazy. Next is, I'll save Sampo for the end. We'll go Serval. I think Serval is A rank. I think Serval is slightly better than Himiko for AoE damage, which is sad given that Serval is a 4-star. And you get the damage over time from shock, and you get just overall a better AoE damage dealer. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Again, it's like Himiko, Serval, it makes Jing Yuan, and Serval is just the electro and better AoE damage part of Jing Yuan, and Himiko is just the follow-up attack. So you know, Serval's just a good electric AoE damage dealer overall. I like Serval. I wish I could build her and use her, but it's hard to build characters as a free-to-play, and most of my resources go to Seele because Seele clears all content, and it's easier to build Seele than anyone else. So then I could then build everyone else a little bit quicker and easier, you know, looking into the future. But Serval's a very good electric AoE DPS, only really superseded by Jing Yuan for electro. Sushang, also A rank. You could argue she could be up in S rank, but that's only if you are weakness breaking your enemies and doing a cycle where you're getting the most of your damage output, like ulting when they're broken and other things. She's strong, but for the most part, a lot of her value comes from being the best single target physical damage dealer, which does not currently, there's not a lot of. The only other option really is Physical Trailblazer, who is more of a bruiser. Sushang's a lot more single target damage, and she does it pretty good. She's more consistent than Dan Heng. Dan Heng is probably a higher damage ceiling slightly because he has so much pierce damage. She has more like kind of semi follow-up attacks if they're weakness broken or if you roll lucky. So she's the best physical damage dealer, and she serves her role well. She's got good damage, and she's adorable and throws a chicken at you, so it's very cute. So she's going to be A rank alongside Dan Heng. Honestly, I'm going to put her right next to Dan Heng because they are basically two different sides of the coin. One's more consistent. One is One's basically the free-to-play hunt character for auto mode. One's the free-to-play hunt character for if you manual everything. That's basically what those two characters are. Next up, Tingyun. Tingyun is S tier. Most buffers are going to be. Tingyun is the poor man's Bronya, but also does really good. She's got the helps you increase your energy. She does like her own type of follow-up attack from the benediction buff. She has a longer lasting damage boost, although it's not as high as Bronya's, and it's just she's a very good character overall for your team. And you very commonly can see people run Bronya and Tingyun and have a hyper carry like Seele and just pump the crap out of Seele, and then Seele just goes and kills everything because she's got like a 100% damage boost or attack boost or however it goes. So it's pretty crazy. Fire Trailblazer, S tier. AoE tank, has taunt, good ult and damage and basic attacks. Like Fire Trailblazer is just value on a character compared to Traveler from Genshin Impact, Hoyo versus and miHoYo's other very popular game I'm sure you've heard of. The Traveler sucked until the 4th element, and even then they're not the greatest at it. They're just an option. Fire Trailblazer went from being kind of crappy at physical to holy crap, I need you on my team at any given time on fire. So they are literally, if anything, just because they are the character that everyone literally has to run alongside their healer to clear a lot of content, is going to be S tier because she's just a very strong tank. Physical Trailblazer, I want to put in B tier. You can make them deal good damage, but they don't. And Sushang's better for single target, and even though Physical Trailblazer has some AoE, it's not very good. Like it can be useful, but it's not amazing particularly. I've seen showcases where they're dealing crazy damage, but also that's on the high end of the spectrum with a bunch of buffs and the hypercarry team. Like it's a lot to make them look good. Otherwise, they look very mediocre, which is why B tier is probably good, because B tier in the middle of the road here is the mediocre tier. They're meh. They're not above average, which is really funny because the average is S tier. This game is so well balanced, honestly. If like most characters are A and S tier, that means that they're doing a really good job balancing. Next up is Welt. Welt is S tier. He makes the enemy not able to move. He's super good in boss fights because they just can't move. Welt and Hung combo, they cannot move. Welt makes it to where you essentially get more turns because they cannot move. Like Welt is just really stupid OP, and most players who have Welt just beat a lot of content that they otherwise shouldn't because the enemy cannot move. So if you keep them from taking turns, you win. So Welt is really OP for that reason and that reason alone, and I don't think we need to talk anything more about him. Yanqing, also S tier. He is the hunt character for ice, which is really important because there's not many good ice damage dealers. There isn't really any ice damage dealers particularly right now. We have a tank and we have a support. So he does fill the niche of you need ice damage at some point, and most players will be with March 7th. March 7th can't do that kind of damage very well, but Yanqing can, and his damage is very competitive. He has a lot of crit value, which makes him very strong. That's most of what he does. Is his ability to crit is higher than most, so his damage is supplemented by that consistency and that extra damage a lot. And he's also just very, very powerful overall as another great hunt character. He's just, he fills a very good niche. Eventually there's gonna be a new ice character that is better than him. I'm hoping they're like really big, beefy, like Viking type guy, because as of right now, our 4 ice characters are a bunch of cinnamon rolls. March 7th, Pela, Gepard, and Yanqing. They're all young and they're all cutesy. We need someone really like, right? So at some point he's probably going to get outscaled by like a ice destruction character that just changes the landscape of the game because they're like really OP. And probably just has good damage because they're going to be jacked. So I'm hoping to see that. Anyways, yeah, Yanqing, best ice DPS right now, and he's going to be up there as like also one of the top 4, possibly top 3 single target DPSs in the game as well. And last but not least, Sampo. If you guys have seen my Sampo video, you know my opinion on Sampo. But I think Sampo is S tier, and the reason for this, hear me out. In damage over time teams, he is the damage over time support, increasing your damage over time stacks damage by some 20+%. He also is the best wind guard breaker in the game currently, so he has a lot of value there, and he is the best damage over time dealer in the game currently, so he has a lot of value there. He is the best support, the best breaker, and the best attacker in the game for his niches overall. And when Kafka comes out, right, Kafka's going to go right up there with him as the best damage over time dealer and kind of, yeah, dealer essentially. And these two are going to get stupid together. They're going to get really stupid together. And that also fuels to an extent my theory that Sampo is a Stellaron hunter. I will have to make a video about that now soon because it's been released to the public, but that is my theory. Looking around, like, I'm just going to preemptively say Kafka's going to be S tier because Kafka Sampo is going to make an entire damage over time centric team, and that synergy is going to be utilized everywhere because the damage over time is insane. Looking at everyone else, I don't know anyone else's kit other than Luocha to an extent, and I'm assuming he's going to probably be S tier. Isn't he? Yeah, he's the next character that's coming out. We know what he does. He's going to probably be S tier. Also, he's a healer. Would you look at that? Silverwolf did get nerfed, which is why I think preemptively she might be closer to A tier because her nerfs, from what I'm hearing, were pretty drastic. And for what her role is, it's not going to be as good. I think, well, no, she's probably going to be S tier because Pela is going to be worse than Silverwolf for debuffing enemies. Therefore, if Pela's A tier, Silverwolf is S tier. She's definitely going to be at the bottom of S tier, though, in my opinion, because if the nerfs stick and they are as drastic as people are saying, Silverwolf is going to not be as amazing of a pick and is going to become, for free-to-play players especially, not worth pulling for, I think, unless you have Seele because of how she makes everything weak to Quantum, which with Seele means that you don't have to build another team. You no longer need other weaknesses. You just need that. You do that, and then the damage over time team, you're done. You're done. Game's over. But I'm going to leave them off of the tier list for now, but that is where I think those three are all going to be S tier. I can't speak for everyone else. Blade might actually be pretty strong too, because from what I've seen, some clips of him, he seems pretty powerful. Otherwise, these guys I literally do not know about.